The views expressed are solely those of the speaker and not necessarily those of Paltalk.com, AVM software, or its advertisers.
News Talk is online. News Talk Online is a production of Paltalk.com, the largest multimedia interactive program on the internet, with more than 4 million unique users on demand on iTunes and on YouTube. And on my site, GaryBaumgarten.com, of course, where you are encouraged to post your comments whether you agree with me or not. And thanks to our friends at CRN Digital Talk Radio, we're syndicated across the United States into 12 million additional households. I am your host, Gary Baumgarten. Got a little bit of a cowlick here, I see. Where did that name come from, cowlick? Cowlick. It makes me kind of nervous about why my hair is standing up in the back. Anyway, Curtis Sliwa is supposed to be our guest right now. We're having trouble getting through to him, but we're going to keep trying. He is the WABC radio talk show host who was shot while riding in the back of a taxi. And that was almost 20 years ago now, 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, I think, maybe 15. And it was a mob hit, and it was alleged in a federal indictment that John Jr. Gotti, the son of the Teflon Don John Gotti, ordered the hit on Sliwa because on his radio show, Sliwa was attacking his daddy, who was then the head of the mob here, the Gambino crime family in New York City. Father is now dead, died in prison. And he was indicted for that attempted murder of Curtis Sliwa. And that ended in a hung jury. And Sliwa then they tried the guy who actually attempted the hit. Shot him up in the back of the cab. It was a stolen cab that Sliwa flagged down in front of his house before going into work in the pre-dawn hours. Sliwa kicked out the window and climbed out of the cab to safety. Nearly died. Was shot multiple times. He was convicted, and during his trial, he admitted or acknowledged or asserted that John Jr. Gotti ordered the hit, and the judge found that to be credible. But they never retried Gotti. Well, now they've got Gotti on a couple of other cases down in Tampa, including allegedly ordering the hit of 3 individuals down there. I'm sorry, down in Florida. Did I say down in Canada? Down in Florida. But Curtis is not on the phone right now. We keep getting his voicemail. So, while we are waiting for Curtis Sliwa to join us, let's talk a little bit about oil, and we'll interrupt this conversation as soon as we've got Curtis. I'm a little bit confused because they say that one of the reasons the cost of oil is so high is because there's a shortage of oil in the pipeline, and if we allow for offshore drilling of oil, while it will take 5 to 10 years for that oil actually to make it into the pipeline, the speculators will look ahead and say, well, as a result of that, cost of oil should go down. Well, I'm looking at a report from Reuters that says that while the U.S. oil industry wants access to more federal lands to help reduce reliance on foreign suppliers, American-based companies are shipping record amounts of gasoline and diesel fuel to other countries. Okay, that's going to be the discussion on the second half of the show because we now have Curtis Sliwa. Am I confusing you by going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth? Another short synopsis. Curtis Sliwa is a talk show host at WABC here in New York City. He was on the air. He was attacking John Gotti Sr., who was then the head of the Gambino crime family. He was flagging down a taxi cab in front of his house one morning to come to the radio station in the pre-dawn hours. That cab had been stolen by some members of the mob. The cab driver was a mob member. There was another guy that was lying down on the floorboard who jumped up, shot Curtis multiple times at point-blank range. Anybody else would have died, but Curtis, who is the founder of the Guardian Angels Safety Patrol. The crime fighting group is an exceptional individual. He kicked out the window of the cab and fell to the pavement, nearly dead, but thankfully still alive. The cab took off. Ultimately, the feds indicted John Jr. Gotti, that's John Gotti's son, on charges that he ordered the hit. There was a hung jury. They decided not to retry Jr. And then the guy who actually pulled the gun on Curtis was tried and pointed the finger at John Jr. Gotti. Well, Curtis Sliwa then offered to pay the younger Gotti $100,000 if he passed a lie detector test, which would exonerate him. Well, Gotti never rose to that bait. And, you know, Curtis, and you and I have had many discussions about the failings of the criminal justice system, the frustrations, but you and I have always said that sooner or later, John Jr. Gotti would get his. And yesterday it happened. They came and slapped the cuffs on him. A number of racketeering charges, including the allegation that down in Tampa, Florida, he ordered the hit of 3 individuals who unfortunately did die. Are you hopeful, Curtis, that this will mean the end of freedom for John Jr. Gotti?
Well, glory, hallelujah, hallelujah, Gary Baumgarten. They said it would never happen. The feds, after the 3rd trial, the hung jury, this time they actually found John Gotti Jr. guilty of my kidnap and assault. It's just there was this problem of statute of limitation. The feds didn't bag him in enough time, and the jury bought this wacky concept of withdrawal, which meant that in 1999 they believed that John Gotti Jr., who took responsibility for all he had done before 1999, suddenly had an epiphany. All of a sudden he had stigmata. He said, I got to resign from organized crime. I need the gold watch. I need the 401k. I need to retire.